It is the greatest showdown in movie history. The good, the bad, and the ugly. 1966 isn't just a film, it's a cinematic religion that defined cool for half a century. But while Tuco and Blondie searched for a grave full of gold, the actors who played them found early graves full of sorrow. Behind the iconic ponchos and the Ennio Morricone score lies a grim history of drug addiction, horrifying suicides, and agonizing illnesses that decimated the cast. Join us as we walk through the cemetery of Sad Hill one last time to pay tribute to the legends who have ridden off into the eternal sunset, leaving only their shadows behind. Lee Van Cleef joined the film 1968 as Sentenza Angel Eyes, the demonic mercenary whose piercing gaze hid a body ravaged by pain and a heart failing under the weight of his own legend. Lee Van Cleef was 41 years old when he solidified his status as cinema's greatest villain, the Bad. While Clint Eastwood demanded a percentage of the profits, Van Cleef was paid a flat salary estimated at $50,000 to $70,000 for the role, a significant raise from his previous film, but a fraction of the $25 million movie grossed in the US alone. He never saw a dime of back-end royalties, meaning the studio profited from his likeness for decades while he worked until the end. His stoic, narrowing eyes were not just acting, they were a mask for chronic agony. A shattered knee from a 1958 car crash and a missing fingertip left him in constant pain, which he self-medicated with alcohol and painkillers, leading to severe heart disease. He spent his final years with a pacemaker, struggling to breathe, a bad man who was actually a fragile, suffering soul. He died of a massive heart attack on December 16th in 1989 at the age of 64. He left behind a net worth of approximately $2 million, a fortune earned in blood and pain during his later years, proving that while he played the villain, he was the hero of his own survival story. Fun fact: he was missing the tip of his middle finger on his right hand, a disfigurement he usually hid with clever camera angles. But if you look closely during the gun assembly scenes, you can spot the deformity. Angel Eyes was a solitary predator, but he relied on a gang of henchmen, the most loyal of whom was played by a man who risked his life for the film without ever showing his face on a poster. Benito Stefanelli joined the film 1966 as a member of Angel Eyes' gang, the invisible architect of the film's violence who broke his body for a paycheck that barely covered the medical bills. Benito Stefanelli was 38 years old and served a dual role. He was a henchman on screen and the uncredited stunt coordinator off-screen. Despite holding two critical jobs that defined the film's action, his pay was a meager flat fee estimated at $3,000 to $5,000 total. He choreographed the brutal beatings and dangerous falls, taking the physical punishment that the stars refused. In the 1960s, stunt safety was non-existent. Stefanelli threw himself off horses and roofs onto hard ground, accumulating injuries that plagued him with crippling arthritis in his later years. He was the man behind the man, fluent in English and serving as the bridge between Leone and Eastwood, yet he died without the fame or the fortune of the men he protected. He passed away on December 18, 1999 at the age of 71. He died quietly, leaving behind a net worth of under $500,000, a humble sum for the man who essentially invented the physical language of the spaghetti western genre. Fun fact: he appeared in countless films as a stuntman, but he rarely spoke on camera. In this film, his silent, looming presence was used to enhance the menace of Angel Eyes without needing dialogue. Stefanelli managed the stunts, but the gang needed physical intimidation provided by a towering actor whose life ended in a sudden violent crash on a lonely road. Romano Pupo joined the film 1966 as a member of Angel Eyes' gang, the towering giant whose imposing stature led to a career of typecasting and a shocking violent death. Romano Pupo was 33 years old when he played one of Angel Eyes' most recognizable thugs. Standing at a massive 6'6", he was hired solely for his size to make Lee Van Cleef look like a leader of monsters. His compensation was the standard day player rate for Italian stunt actors, earning roughly $500 for the production. Pupo spent his entire career playing nameless henchmen who were beaten or shot by the hero, never allowed to display his range or personality. He was a blue-collar worker of the cinema, moving from set to feed his family. His tragedy was not a slow decline, but a brutal, instantaneous end. On May 11, 1994, while riding his scooter in Trieste, Italy, he suffered a fatal heart attack or seizure that caused him to crash violently. He was 61 years old. He died on the asphalt, leaving behind a negligible estate and a filmography of over 100 films where he was always the villain, never the victor. Fun fact: due to his incredible height and build, he was often used as a body double for Lee Van Cleef in long-distance shots, meaning many times you think you see the bad, you are actually seeing Pupo. The gang was full of giants, but the man sent to do the dirty work of killing the hero was a Spanish actor whose face was known to millions, but whose name was known to none. Lorenzo Robledo joined the film 1966 as Clem, the loyal enforcer who pulled the trigger for his boss, only to be forgotten by the industry he served for decades. Lorenzo Robledo was 48 years old when he played Clem, the henchman sent to assassinate Tuco. Robledo was a fixture of the spaghetti western, appearing in virtually every major film of the genre filmed in Spain. Despite his ubiquity, he was treated as disposable labor. His pay for the good, the bad, and the ugly was a weekly rate of approximately $200, totaling perhaps $1,000 for his contribution to a masterpiece. While the film sells millions of copies on Blu-ray today, Robledo received zero residuals, living a modest middle-class life in Madrid. He was the ultimate face without a name, a man who contributed to the atmosphere of the West, but reaped none of the glory. He died on September 28, 2006 at the age of 88 from heart complications. He passed away in obscurity, leaving behind a modest estate of roughly $300,000, the savings of a man who spent his life dying on dusty sets for our entertainment. Fun fact: he holds the rare distinction of being killed by all three main characters, Clint Eastwood, Lee Van Cleef, and Eli Wallach, across different films in the trilogy, making him the professional victim of the series. Clem was a killer, but his first target in the movie was a helpless man eating soup, a victim played by a respected actor whose tragic decline mirrored the death of the Western genre itself. Antonio Casas joined the film 1966 as Stevens, the doomed father whose brutal interrogation scene set the dark tone for the entire masterpiece. Antonio Casas was 55 years old when he played Stevens, the man Angel Eyes visits in the film's terrifying opening. A former professional footballer turned actor, Casas was a respected name in Spanish cinema, yet his pay was a fraction of his American counterparts. He likely earned a flat fee of $2,500 for his brief but pivotal role. Casas brought a gravitas to the role that most extras lacked, selling the fear of inevitable death. However, as the Western genre faded in the late 70s, so did his career. He struggled to find work that matched his dignity, often relegated to low-budget horror films to pay the bills. He died on February 14, 1982, at the relatively young age of 70 from liver failure. He left behind a legacy of professionalism, but a modest net worth of under $500, a man who gave the film its emotional stakes, but didn't live long enough to see it become a global cult classic. Fun fact: before becoming an actor, he was a star athlete playing for Atletico Madrid, but an injury forced him to trade the football pitch for the soundstage, changing his destiny forever. Stevens died protecting a secret, leaving behind a grieving widow, played by a woman who was once the most exotic dancer in the world, yet found herself the only female face in a landscape of ruthless men. Chelo Alonso joined the film 1966 as Stevens' wife, the Cuban bombshell who silenced a room of killers with a single look, only to trade her stardom for a quiet life that ended in shadows. Chelo Alonso was 33 years old when she appeared as the only significant female presence in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Known as the Italian H-bomb for her role in Peplum sword and sandal films, she was a major European sex symbol. However, her appearance in this film was a cameo, earning her a flat fee estimated at $3,000 to $5,000, a surprisingly low figure for a woman whose face sold millions of tickets in the early 60s. The contrast between her on-screen magnetism and her financial compensation was stark. She was used as visual decoration in a male-dominated landscape. Shortly after this film, she abandoned her acting career to marry a producer and raise a family, disappearing from the public eye. Her personal tragedy was the slow erosion of her identity. The world moved on, and the woman who once ignited screens was forgotten. She spent her final years battling Parkinson's disease, a cruel affliction for a woman known for her physicality and dance. She passed away on February 20th, 2019 in Italy at the age of 85. She left behind a modest estate, dying as a grandmother rather than the icon she once was. Fun fact: she was a former dancer at the Folies Bergère in Paris, and her lack of dialogue in the film was intentional, as Leone believed her physical presence was more powerful than any line he could write. The beauty of Stevens's wife was a fleeting moment of grace, but the film quickly descended back into brutality, personified by a corporal played by a man who didn't need to act to be terrifying. Mario Brega joined the film 1966 as CPL Wallace, the sadistic prison guard whose brutal beating of Tuco remains one of the most painful scenes in cinema history. Mario Brega was 43 years old when he played the role of the thuggish Corporal Wallace. A former butcher from Rome, Brega brought a heaviness to the screen that was terrifyingly real. Despite his recurring roles in all $3 films, he was paid a working-class wage, earning approximately $1,500 to $2,000 for his work on this production. He was not a star. He was a tool used by Leone to inflict violence. While the film made millions, Brega lived a life of excess that mirrored his large physique. His gluttony and heavy smoking were legendary, but they masked a deep-seated insecurity and health anxiety. His tragedy was his own body. He literally ate himself to death. He suffered for years with severe diabetes and heart disease, finally succumbing to a massive heart attack on July 23, 1994, at the age of 71. He collapsed in his apartment in Rome, leaving behind a net worth of roughly $500,000, a humble sum for a man whose fists are immortalized on celluloid. Fun fact: the scene where he beats Eli Wallach was so intense that Brega actually got carried away and bruised the actor for real, forcing Wallach to scream in genuine pain, which made it into the final cut. Corporal Wallace inflicted physical pain on Tuco, but the next character inflicted a much deeper emotional wound, a brother played by an actor whose real-life darkness led to the most tragic end of the entire cast. Luigi Pistilli joined the film 1966 as Father Pablo Ramirez, the holy man whose rejection of his brother Tuco hid the actor's own losing battle with demons far worse than sin. Luigi Pistilli was 37 years old when he played the monk, bringing a Shakespearean gravity to the Western genre. A highly modified stage actor, his salary was respectable for a supporting role, estimated at $5,000. However, beneath the pious robes of Father Ramirez was a man disintegrating from the inside. Pistilli suffered from severe clinical depression, a condition he hid from the cameras for decades. The tragedy of his life is one of the most devastating in Italian cinema history. In 1996, after a theater performance of Terence Rattigan's The Deep Blue Sea was critically panned and canceled, Pistilli snapped. Unable to cope with the perceived failure and his chronic mental anguish, he hanged himself in his Milan apartment on April 21, 1996, at the age of 66. He left behind a suicide note apologizing for his inadequacy. He died with a net worth of roughly $1 million, but completely bankrupt of hope, a stark reminder that even the strongest performers can be broken by their own minds. Fun fact: he was considered one of Italy's finest interpreters of Bertolt Brecht's plays, proving that his talent went far beyond the dusty saloons of the spaghetti westerns he is best known for internationally. Father Ramirez lived in the quiet of the monastery, but the war outside was raging, led by a drunken captain played by a comedic genius whose voice was silenced before his death. Aldo Giuffre joined the film 1966 as the alcoholic Union captain, the disillusioned soldier whose dream of destroying a bridge became a metaphor for the futility of war. Aldo Jouffret was 42 years old when he delivered one of the film's most poignant performances. A famous Neapolitan comedian and voice actor, Jouffret was hired to bring a tragic humanity to the role. His pay was in the upper tier, for supporting talent likely earning $6,000 to $8,000. He played a man drinking to numb the pain of slaughter, a role that required deep emotional resonance. In real life, Jouffret was a man of voice. He was the Italian dubber for stars like Kojak. His personal tragedy struck later in life when he underwent a throat operation that severely damaged his vocal cords, stealing the very instrument that made him famous. The frustration of a voice actor losing his voice is a cruel irony. He died on June 26, 2010 at the age of 86 from peritonitis. He left behind a substantial body of work and an estate estimated at $2 million, but he spent his final years in a silence that was far more painful than the noise of the battlefield. Fun fact: before becoming an actor, he worked as a radio announcer during World War II, announcing real battles, much like the fictional ones he would later command on screen. The drunken captain died with a smile as the bridge blew up, but in the prison camp nearby, another captain ruled with dignity, played by a Spanish actor who was always the villain, except for this one shining moment. Antonio Molino Rojo joined the film 1966 as Captain Sir Harper, the noble commandant with the gangrenous leg, whose decency stood in stark contrast to the cruelty of the camp. Antonio Molino Rojo was 40 years old when he played Captain Harper, the only character in the film who treats the prisoners with respect. A staple of the Almeria film industry, Molino Rojo appeared in almost every Western of the era. Despite his ubiquity, he was paid a standard day player wage, accumulating roughly $2,000 for the shoot. His career was a study in typecasting. Because of his tall, imposing frame, he was almost always cast as a sadistic henchman or a silent killer. This role was his rare chance to play a good man, and he delivered a performance of quiet suffering. His real life was devoid of the spotlight. He was a working actor who clocked in and clocked out. He died on November 2, 2011 in Barcelona at the age of 85. He passed away from natural causes, leaving behind a modest estate of under $500,000 and a legacy of over 90 films where he was the backbone of the production, even if the audience never learned his name. Fun fact: he was often credited under anglicized names like Anthony Redmill in international releases to make the cast list seem more American, erasing his Spanish identity for marketing purposes. The sergeant presided over the dying, but out in the desert, a bounty hunter roamed, played by a man whose body was broken more times than any stuntman in history. Frank Bragna joined the film 1966 as Bounty Hunter Number 2, the rugged survivor who treated broken bones as a business expense in a career defined by pain. Frank Bragna was 32 years old when he appeared as one of the bounty hunters tracking the protagonists. A former shepherd and miner, Bragna was built of granite and became the go-to tough guy for European westerns. His compensation was a weekly fee of roughly $200 a pittance, considering the physical toll the job exacted. Bragna didn't just act, he threw his body onto rocks, fell off horses, and took punches that were often all too real. Over a career spanning 170 films, he suffered countless concussions and fractures, essentially selling his physical health for a paycheck. While the stars had trailers and stunt doubles, Bragna had grit and a bottle of aspirin. His final years were marked by the chronic agony of a life spent as a human crash test dummy. He died on February 13, 2012 in Madrid at the age of 77. He left behind a legacy of resilience, but a net worth of under $400,000, proving that in the Wild West of filmmaking, the men who took the hardest hits often walked away with the lightest pockets. Fun fact: he kept a morbid diary detailing every time he died on screen, and by the end of his career, he had recorded over 160 cinematic deaths, likely a world record for on-screen fatalities. Bragna was a hunter who took the hits, but riding alongside him was another gunman played by a Spanish veteran who faded into the dust of cinema history. Saturno Cerra joined the film 1966 as a bounty hunter, the silent killer whose gun was faster than his rise to stardom. Saturno Cerra was 42 years old when he joined the posse of bounty hunters trying to collect the reward on Tuco, A reliable face in the Almeria film industry, Serra was part of the invisible army of Spanish actors who populated these co-productions. His salary was the standard union minimum, likely a flat fee of $1,000 for the production. Unlike the leads who became legends, Serra remained a worker bee, moving from westerns to comedies as the industry shifted. His tragedy is the tragedy of the middle-class actor. He worked constantly, but never achieved the breakout role that would secure his financial future. He watched as the genre he helped build crumbled in the late 70s, leaving him and his colleagues to scramble for television work. He died on December 5, 2015, at the age of 91. He passed away in relative obscurity, leaving behind a modest estate and a filmography where he is often listed simply as henchman or gunman, a nameless soldier in the war for entertainment. Fun fact: he was also a talented voice actor in Spain, often dubbing foreign cartoons, which provided him a steady income when the physical roles in westerns dried up. The hunters worked in a pack, and completing this group was a blonde-haired actor who often played the heavy but whose career ended in silence. Sergio Mendizábal joined the film 1968 as the blonde bounty hunter, the imposing figure whose fair features made him a standout villain in a land of dark grit. Sergio Mendizábal was 46 years old when he played the blonde bounty hunter who attempts to ambush the heroes. With his tall stature and lighter hair, he was frequently cast as corrupt officials or Northern European villains in Spanish productions. His pay for the good, the bad, and the ugly was a standard supporting fee estimated at $500. Mendizábal was a journeyman actor who understood his place in the food chain. He was there to look menacing and then die. He never saw the wealth of Hollywood. He lived on the modest earnings of the European film circuit. As he aged, the roles became fewer and further between, and he slowly faded from the industry he loved. He died in 2005 at the age of 84. His death went largely unreported by the major film press, a quiet end for a man who had shared the screen with Clint Eastwood. He left behind a net worth of under $300, the savings of a man who spent his life playing the bad guy so the good guys could shine. Fun fact: in the credits of many of his films, his name was anglicized to Sergio Mendes or even Rex Migo to make the production seem less Spanish to international buyers. The bounty hunters operated outside the law, but chasing Tuco required a man with a badge, played by a Hungarian exile who found a new home in the lawless West. John Bartha joined the film 1966 as the sheriff, the exhausted lawman whose pursuit of Tuco was a metaphor for his own tireless, unrewarded career. John Bartha was 51 years old when he played the sheriff tasked with hanging Tuco. Born János Bartha in Hungary, he was an actor who found steady work in Italy and Spain playing authority figures. His salary for the film was a recurring guest rate accumulating roughly $2,000 for his scenes. Bartha's life was defined by displacement. Like many Eastern European actors of the time, he moved west to find work, often landing roles because of his stern foreign look. Despite appearing in countless spaghetti westerns, usually as a sheriff or a general, he was never embraced as a star. He was a utility player, always dubbed, always supporting. He passed away on March 7, 1991, at the age of 76. He died in Rome, leaving behind a modest legacy and estate. His tragedy was one of identity. He was a man who played the ultimate American authority figure, the sheriff. Yet he died thousands of miles away from the frontier, a European pretending to be a cowboy to pay the bills. Fun fact: because of his thick Hungarian accent, he was dubbed in almost every single movie he appeared in, including the Italian versions of his films, meaning audiences almost never heard his real voice. The sheriff chased the bandit, but the innocent bystander caught in the middle was a terrified hotel owner played by an actor who outlived the entire cast to tell the tale. Jesus Guzman joined the film 1966 as Pardo, the hotel owner, the trembling innkeeper whose comedic terror provided a brief respite from the violence played by a man who survived nearly a century. Jesus Guzman was 40 years old when he played Pardo, the hotel owner who is bullied by the protagonists. His role was small but memorable, earning him a daily rate that likely totaled $500. While his character was weak, Guzman was a survivor of immense strength. He appeared in over 150 films and television shows, becoming one of the most beloved faces in Spanish cinema history. His tragedy was the burden of time. He lived long enough to see the world he built disappear. He watched every single one of his friends from the set of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly die, leaving him as the sole keeper of their memories. He worked well into his 90s, refusing to retire. He finally passed away very recently on October 16, 2023, at the incredible age of 97. He was one of the last living links to the golden age of the spaghetti western, leaving behind a legacy of laughter and longevity that outshined the meager paychecks of his youth. Fun fact: he became a national treasure in Spain for playing the postman Braulio in the TV series Crónicas de un Pueblo, a role so popular that people on the street would try to hand him their mail for decades afterward. The hotel owner survived the bandits, but in the past, Tuco had been tormented by a baker, played by an actor whose boisterous voice masked a career spent in the shadows of the greats. Livio Lorenzon joined the film 1966 as the baker, the boisterous man whose torment by Tuco revealed the ruthless cruelty of the film's anti-hero. Livio Lorenzon was 43 years old when he played the baker, bringing his distinctively raspy voice and shaved head to the screen. A staple of Italian cinema, Lorenzon was often cast as the heavy or the villain due to his harsh features. His compensation for this role was a standard fee for a mid-tier Italian character actor, approximately $2,000 for his time on set. While this was a decent wage for a week's work in 1966, Rome, it paled in comparison to the millions the film would gross worldwide. Lorenzon never saw a residual check. He was paid to be a prop in Tuco's story. The tragedy of Livio Lorenzon was his brevity. He was a man who lived fast and died young. Just 5 years after The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly release tragedy struck. He died on December 23, 1971, at the painfully young age of 48. The cause was cirrhosis of the liver, a grim testament to the hard-living lifestyle often demanded of actors in the Italian film industry of that era. He left behind a modest estate of under $200,000, his potential cut short before he could transition into the revered elder statesman roles that his peers eventually enjoyed. Fun fact: his gravelly voice was so unique and powerful that he was frequently hired just to do voiceover work for other actors, playing tough guys and monsters without ever appearing on screen. The baker suffered at the hands of Tuco, but in the town of Socorro, a saloon keeper watched the events unfold, played by a man whose imposing size hid the soul of a frustrated artist. Ricardo Palacios joined the film 1966 as the barista of Socorro, the heavy-set barkeep who represented the atmosphere of the lawless West. Ricardo Palacios was just 26 years old when he played the saloon keeper, though his heavy build made him appear much older. He was a staple of the genre, his size making him the perfect imposing extra. His salary for the film was strictly scale, approximately $1,200 for the week of shooting. However, Palacios was not just a brute for hire. He was an intellectual trapped in a character actor's body. He spent his life trying to be taken seriously as a director and writer, struggling against a system that only wanted him to play bartenders and bandits. He eventually managed to direct a few films, but they were low budget and largely ignored, a source of lifelong frustration. His physical health was his ultimate tragedy. His weight, which got him hired, eventually caused severe cardiovascular issues. He died on February 11, 2015 in Madrid at the age of 74. He passed away from heart failure, leaving behind a modest estate of roughly $600. An artist who spent his life serving drinks to fake cowboys while dreaming of making his own art. Fun fact: he directed the 1982 film Buitres sobre la Ciudad, trying to revive the Western genre long after it had died, proving his undying love for the cowboys that gave him a career. It's bittersweet looking back at the cast of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Though time has passed and some stars have left us, their legacy remains timeless on screen. Which story shocked or touched you the most? Let us know in the comments below. Please like and subscribe to help us keep these memories alive. Thanks for watching.